Go live. All right, we're going live here. All right, everybody. I haven't been on YouTube in a long time. Hopefully, everyone can hear me well. If you could shout out in the chat. I'm glad that Buster's here. Thanks for being here, Buster. If everything sounds okay, just let me know. I have a very special guest today, Thomas Sheridan. Obviously, for this particular crew, I've already had a few people on Twitter comment that about Thomas. I mean, I don't think he needs much of an introduction with some of the folks here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I can hear you just fine. Awesome. Okay, excellent, everybody. So, Thomas, obviously, I'm hoping most folks know who you are, what you're about. I certainly do. I admire a lot of what you say and a lot of your work. So, how have you been lately?
Good. Likewise, I really like your channel. So thanks for having me on. Yeah, I'm okay. I'm doing all right considering all the limitations and that this whole lockdown has put on my life and everything. But I mean, we're all in the same boat together, more or less. Some countries are worse than others, but it's just a matter of trying to negotiate an existence through that
Yeah.
until it all ends.
No, no, you're absolutely right. And I can tell you, I'm glad you started off with that because it's a really big topic with me. And I don't know if I have unrealistic expectations of those around me, or I don't know. I just, a lot of people, once the screws started to get to them, um, he, sorry, as in our president, he started to put in these particular, uh, he's threatening to put in these particular mandates. And the problem is now a lot of the big corporations and medium and small size corporations are they're starting to really crack down. It's starting to affect me too, and a lot of people I got along really well with and admired, they've buckled under and they've gotten the shot. So it's kind of a shame.
Well, that's their own business. What the hell they choose to manage their healthcare in this age is their business. I would never hold it against them, but that's their freedom. But what bothers me is that the rest of us are not allowed to have the same freedom, and it's a completely political thing. Absolutely, it's like hydroxychloroquine is only shunned and looked down upon because Trump recommended it, and it was purely you cannot get it anywhere or in a lot of places, and it's purely a political decision. So you have so-called healthcare people all over the world who are actually killing people because of a political partisan, connection to drugs or vaccines or whatever. And uh, the viciousness of it is what really amazes me. It's like so many people I know that I thought were okay and so decent. The spineless, they became spineless cowards when this thing happened. But not only that, they became vicious and nasty and mean. It was a real launch of the reptilian subcortex into the zeitgeist, the body politic of so many people.
Yeah, that's well put. I too, I think that's you. I think the way you characterized it is more succinct than I did. I feel the same way. Certainly, I never, because of my personal, set of principles and philosophies, I'd never dare tell someone how to live their life, particularly something as private as their personal health care. And I think that's what disgusts me so much is that something that used to be very private, something that used to be part of what we considered maybe, at least, in America, one of the bedrocks of our human rights was the right to choose things for our own bodies. And that's I think throughout the West. I don't want to speak for other countries, but I think that's pretty much a major part of the West, and certainly other parts of the world as well, is the ability to have the autonomy to choose to what goes in and out of your body and what you can do with it. Obviously, there are restrictions here in America that I disagree with, such as the drug policy here. the draconian drug policy. But it's an entirely different thing right now. Right now, what we're dealing with is affecting all of us, and it's being pushed on us, and
Yeah.
I'm feeling the weight of it. And my career's at stake now. People around me have buckled under from the pressure, and it's even in as deep as my family, and it's just really getting to me.
It's terrible, isn't it? Like I'll probably never be able to visit the United States ever again unless they rescind this flying jab only law. And this, U.S. a country I've spent a sizable portion of my life in. I've got many of my friends there. It's a country that I have very great fondness for. It's like my second homeland. And yet, just because of this, I can't. I'll probably never see it ever again. And I mean, this is the mentality of these people. This is all. It's it's I don't know how to react to it sometimes. It's so maddening. A virus that is a 99% recovery rate, that we're being dictated to by a combination of hypochondriacs, people who have a primal fear. It's true what they say, like those who've never really lived are the most terrified of death. And that's a big issue of this empty, soulless reality so many people live in today. That this Joe Normie lifestyle, this dead Netflix world that they exist, social media, etc., it has offered them nothing to actually keep them, to fulfill them, so that they live in perpetual fear of dying in case they miss out on something that actually would make their life worth living. And ironically, it has been this for many of them. The actual pandemic, or the whole thing surrounding it, has become an evangelical religion for these people. And the irony is, for all these ones who never found any meaning in their lives, have now finally found it through this evangelical crusade surrounding the COVID thing.
No, no, I certainly agree with that. It's absolutely puritanical. It's fanatical. It's odd. It's strange, and you have to wonder where the source of the narrative is, where this started, and where does it go? Because I don't know where it goes. I have some speculation where it goes. Certainly, there's a lot of people on the internet have particular ideas of what's gonna, where it's going, but I just I don't know. I don't know. It's all bad. It's all really, really bad, and it's personally, it's affecting me personally. And it's a shame. It really is a shame.
Well, the amount of mental health damage, emotional health damage is causing us. And that's not to count for all the hospital operations that have been cancelled, because all the primary thing with the healthcare systems all over the world now is treating COVID patients. So, I mean, I would actually put the situation that we're in now comparable to the Islamic Revolution in Iran in 1979, when the Ayatollah was installed and a fanatical Islamic Republic was created. I would put that we're that on a global scale now, but instead of Islamic Jihad, we have, like, the Branch Covidians, and it's really it's a religion now at this point, and religions don't end well when they become fanatical, and we have all the makings. I mean, the only thing I can think of is there's a part of me hopes that this is actually not real. And by that, I mean, sometimes I think, is it a cover story for something else, like an asteroid or some other thing that they're expecting, that they're kind of keeping us distracted and locked down with? I don't know. I mean, I'm still open to those things because we have had unbelievable asteroid activity in the last year and a bit. It's like every day I nearly switch on and say, well, we just missed by another one. And so part of me does wonder, could it be that? Could it be that? Could it be occupying us with a regular seasonal virus? Uh,
Right.
but either way, even if that was true, I can't understand how you can justify what is going on, say, in Melbourne right now, where in a so-called Western democracy, Australia, the local government in Victoria, has shut down the internet, North Korea style.
God, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. What scares me the most about Australia, I think, is there's so much about it that has parity with America in that it sprang from, Britain, and so much of its history in terms of westward expansion and all of those things.
And it has that same mystique. It represents kind of opportunity and a land of freedom.
Absolutely. The only difference is we're still armed and they aren't. And so, obviously, in my conspiracy brain, is this a test run to see how far they can push an unarmed populace versus a heavily armed populace? Now, I don't know if that has any merit whatsoever, but naturally, that it's living in America and knowing how many firearms everyone has, I can't stop but think of that they haven't gone all the way like they want to because they know. I remember reading a paper when I was really young that one of the reasons why the Soviet Union said it would be impossible to do a land invasion of America was per capita, obviously, we have more firearms than we do human beings in America. And they said it would be a door-to-door firefight, and it would be a block-to-block, acre by acre firefight. And they simply just it would be just too much. And if you look at the stats now in America, Americans outnumber government, armed security, basically martial officials, people who are in the martial laws and the like police and all that, about 5,000 to 1. And you figure, the concentration of weapons are about in 20% of the population, but nonetheless, when the stats are like that, you have to figure out a way in order to cow everyone. And I think they figured it out, Thomas. I think they went for the careers and the money. I think they figured it out.
Yeah, I think definitely the Second Amendment actually keeps the United States in a better condition. But you're obviously can look at the situation you're in now. It's not completely good, but at
No.
least you have that. At least in Australia they don't have that. In Ireland we used to have it. I mean that's how Ireland won its freedom is because there was so many guns, and that this. I mean I was talking about it here. I remember I was talking to a guy who worked in the army here, and he was in charge of the decommissioning of the IRA when they ceased their hostilities like 20, 18 years ago. And they expected to pick up, a few machine guns, rocket launchers, and these guys had everything.
Wow.
They were armed to the teeth with the latest weapons, and they had thousands and thousands of them. And I can't help now but think that if that cash was still available to the average person here, would we be still in the same position if that was also part of it? That was kind of like a backdoor. And I'm not an IRA supporter or anything like that, but I'm just saying they took they took thousands and thousands of modern weapons out of circulation with this peace process, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And they're very clever, these guys. They know exactly what they're doing. And in Australia, you have the situation where this Dan Andrews guy, who's the governor of Victoria, talking to the people like they're little children. This is what gets me. You didn't do this. You didn't do that, mate. You didn't go out. Oh, you didn't go out. Wait, why did you go break social distancing? I'm going to punish you some more. It's like what? He's like holding a whole state, a whole region of Australia down, locking it down like school kids for detention. And this is the nature of the bureaucrat, the bureaucratic mind. But I think they've gotten a fright there now. They picked on the construction workers and the builders. I think they picked on the wrong people, especially as the union leaders had sided with the government to say if you didn't have a job within 2 weeks, don't bother showing up at the construction site looking for work because you're fired. That was the last straw. I think that pushed them over the edge, and I think they've got a hell of a fright down there in Victoria. If they have to go as far as this now, shutting down the internet and banning any kind of aerial footage taken by TV crews of riots, and then they're opening. I mean, I don't know if you saw the videos, but they opened fire with rubber bullets at the Anzac, which is the War Memorial in Melbourne. And they look like something. The Australian cops look like what you'd see in China or North Korea, and there they are, like shooting at Australian construction workers,
God.
and it's like, is this what we've come to? And the answer is yes. And it's a bureaucratic pharmacological big tech hellscape that they're creating.
Yeah, yeah. And it's so baffling that you would think after all this that's happened over the last 18, 19 months, whatever it's been, that more people would have come to their senses. They would have, as everybody say, wake up. And the opposite. It's almost as if more people are cocooning. They're going into themselves. So let me ask you this. It's sort of related. So I know that a lot of people talk about this Pluto return. Have you been keeping up with that?
No, tell me about that. That's new. I haven't heard this one.
All right. So for a lot of countries, there's this 236-year cycle called a Pluto return. And I don't know if it's Western astrology or if it's more Vedic, but um, like I think it's Joni Patri is her name. She's an astrologer, and I think she does Vedic, and she talks about the Pluto return. And the reason why I started paying attention to this was before, and I'm really mad at myself for this. Before all of this started, and it was mid 2019. I was watching an astrology show with two guys. It was just on my feed, and I just started listening to it as in the background, and they were talking about the Pluto return coming, and it comes every 236 years for a nation, and this time it's the Pluto return is for America. And they were saying because the return is such a powerful force that it corrects everything that's been done for some human beings can't go through it because they don't live 236 years, but nations do. For instance, like the United Kingdom, they've gone through three in their more modern era, and where America is about to go through it's in the middle of its first right now, and it's depending. And then I started to pay more attention to it. I went to the Theosophical Society. I started to go to other places and found lectures on it. And according to one of the speakers at the Theosophical Society, they think it's a 20-year, started around 2008, and is going to peak somewhere around like I think 2028 or something like that, and then sort of wane from there. And they're saying that oftentimes nations don't survive it. They just don't, and it does ripple out to the rest of the world. And I know that so it harkens me back to the two fellows I were listening to back in 2019. They were talking about the collapse of empires, and they were talking about Rome and during 600 and something or 60 something, and it was basically the collapse of Rome. And they're saying that everything that's there, including finance and all these other things, are in place for America in some form or shape to implode and to basically collapse or balkanize or all of the above. And
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, there's a certain amount of soothing to that for me, at least, knowing that there's at least something at work at play here bigger than just nameless, faceless bureaucrats. What do you think about that? That I've just thrown that at you.
Well, as a pagan, that's the idea of cycles and secular events is central to my beliefs and my belief package. And absolutely, you're right to feel hope. You're right to feel take a sense of comfort in this because that's what's keeping me going up in all this. Is that are we at the end of the Kali Yuga, as the Swamis have now said that it's sped up and ended? Is this the end of all various prophecy cycles? And we're collapsing. Now that's interesting about the 200. Was it 200? How many years? 200.
I believe, and don't quote me on this because I'm just now trying to figure out this Vedic astrology. I think it's 236 or just
Right.
right around that. Sorry.
Now that's interesting, yeah, because the Act of Union, which created the United Kingdom, is 221 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and we have like Scotland wants to. Now Ireland's already broken away, but Scotland wants to break away,
Mm-hmm.
and this kind of thing, and England is imploding as well. So that would tie in with that as well. It's kind of interesting there that there, that was the 239 years ago would have been when the French, or 36, whatever it was, in that air ballpark would have been the French Revolution, the American Revolution, right? Wouldn't it be? That'd be around that period, wouldn't it?
Yes.
And around the same time as the Treaty of Vienna, which created like the Napoleonic Wars and so on. So Well, that kind of makes sense now that I think about it. That's bang on. There's a kind of a period of chaos, and then it settles down. If you look at what happened to Europe after Napoleon was defeated, and it wasn't necessarily Napoleon's fault, but after it ended, Europe went into the longest period of peace it ever had. It wasn't for another 70 something years before a major war broke out in Europe between the Franco Prussian War. So there could be something to that. But I think there are cycles within cycles. I think, these time cycles, what we're seeing now is supposed to happen. And that's wrong. I don't know why I keep saying this. I really don't. Okay. But I keep saying to people, hold on till the spring. At least we'll have some kind of clarity to know how we can personally plan things ourselves going forward. You know, and in recent times, I came across, people have been talking about in Ireland. There's a prophecy by the battle crow goddess, the Bave, and this is a pagan goddess. And at the end of the Battle of Moytura 3,500 years ago, she looked over the bodies of the slain and issued a prophecy of a time that would come. And this time well, from what she read, sounds exactly like what it is now when the end of that cycle would come. And I'll just read it. It's a short poem, but this has been translated from early Irish. But this is the Babe's prophecy. And it goes, I shall not see a world which will be dear to me. Summer without blossom, cattle without milk, women without modesty, men without valor, conquests without a king, woods without mast, sea without produce, false judgments of old men, false precedents of lawyers, every man a betrayer, every son a reaver. The son will go to the bed of his father, the father will go to the bed of his son, each his brother's brother in law. He will not seek any woman outside his house. An evil time. Son will deceive. His father, daughter will deceive. And I mean, that's uncanny to how it is today. When you have like things like cancel culture, people being accused of false things they didn't do, and so on. The everything is in that. So I think this thing popped up in recent times. Just it came out of like Irish pagan scenes that I've known about this for a long time, but only in recent times, the last 2 or 3 years, that people started to take, is this the time of the babe's prophecy come to pass? So again, along with your 239 cycle or Buddha cycle, along with the natural cycles you have within paganism like Ragnarok and this, the other things, and they're not, they're all, it all points to this, and maybe even an early ending of the Kali Yuga. It all points to this end, this rejuvenation, and it always gets worse before it gets better. But again, I don't know why I keep thinking this, but I keep thinking, hold on till spring. We'll at least we'll have some kind of clarity to know how to manage our lives better. Because right now we're in a state of chaos.
Yeah, it's uncanny what you say. I keep, I was so. It's like I'm trying to make it to the new year. It's funny you said the spring because I'm thinking, for me personally, before you said anything, the last couple weeks I was thinking, you know, once January passes, we'll have a clear understanding of what's what, for better or for worse. We'll have a better understanding. And I have to say though, um, the way that I'm looking at it too, with so many people sort of falling prey to this, and a lot of people that would, I thought were much stronger than they were, started out really strong, and then the moment that the money ripcord was pulled, they folded and crumbled, and it's like, I, at first it's disappointing, but in a lot of ways, you know where you stand. Um, and again, yeah, only people that are really close to me do I feel a genuine disappointment. With everything else, it's more of like a spectacle. You're just, some of these people would just beat their chest and they just would walk around like just, I don't know what. And it's just, they just folded. They just folded. And it was just stunning to watch. So, yeah,
Yeah,
That poem reminded me of that. You know, no one has any valor. No one has a spine. No one, you know,
conquest without a king. Yeah,
yeah, and these wars with it, yeah, exactly about the king. It's like you have all of these movements that just spring up with these leaderless movements, and you know deep down a lot of this stuff isn't organic. You know it's not, and somehow everyone just kind of goes along with it, and it's to the point to where I think for me, it's actually strengthened my resolve in a way because I think had you threatened my career a year ago, just like cold water and thrown it on my face, I would have backed down really fast. But because I've had a year to deal with this, and a year it's been building, and I knew it, and I knew it, and now that it's here and my career is on the line, I'm not backing down. I'll go homeless first. I'm not gonna do it, man. I'd rather lose everything than this. You know, and I'm gonna do what I can for as long as I can that as a single human being to not buckle from this, from the mandates. That's not to say they're not going to find me, come to the door, kick it in. Particularly, you know, you see these outliers from the FDA and some other strangeness going on there that you could, you know, a year ago just out of hand just dismiss, and now you can't. And when, like you talked about with Australia, you know, here too on the Rio Grande, they have drones over the Rio Grande, and they're grounding those drones because of the amount of Haitian migrants that we have on the southern border. That just sort of popped up out of nowhere. I'm sure everyone knows Haiti is an island. Now, I've read an article that tried to explain that they were there for the Brazilian Olympics, and once the Olympics were over and the jobs died up, or dried up. Sorry, I'm listening to folks talking about my microphone. Once they dried up, they moved north from Brazil and they ended up in the Rio Grande. Or no, it's Del Rio, Texas, is where they're at right now. And there's tens of thousands of them, and they're all under this bridge. And it's just, you really get a sense of like Rome's burning, and it's just this apocalyptic thing. So really, what I'm doing is sort of this very apocalyptic. I'm hoping the nation crumbles before I do, kind of thing. That's sort of where I'm at personally.
yeah, I feel the same way. I had no idea it was that bad, but I know they have a lot of issues at the border in the US, but they're flooding all European countries with immigrants too as well.
Mm.
Um, in Ireland, you know, if you're homeless in Ireland, you can forget about the government taking care of you. But if you're an immigrant family that just walked in from Syria or somewhere, you're given a house, you know, and all kinds. And that's it's almost like deliberately done to antagonize people and hurt their feelings or something like that. It's hard to explain, but it's again. I think a lot of our leaders are insane. I really do believe that. I mean, I look at Joe Biden and I see him stumbling, and people say, you know, like, well, he has Alzheimer's, the poor guy, and so on, like that. But I used to think that, but now it almost seems like he's possessed or something. There's some kind of entity inside all of them. Look at Boris Johnson in England. He seems like a sad fool now when he previously saw he came across as a kind of eccentric. Now he just seems like a sad fool. And it seems to be that their leadership is dying. That's what I see. I see leadership dying everywhere. Conquest without kings, and
Mm.
there's no real leadership. There's just this kind of like mob rule in politics and everything else. So to me, it's coming to an end. It's not going like what's happening. I mean, it's ironic. Angela Merkel, I think she was retired today, and she basically did to Europe what Biden is doing to America at the southern border, like letting them all in without. That's the irony. People from I can't go to America because I don't have the COVID shot, but someone with God knows what diseases the developing world, and I'm not putting these people down or anything like that. Don't be thinking that can enter into the United States without getting even a medical check. It's just an insane mess. That's a product and a manifestation and an insight into an insane leadership in all our Western democracies.
Yeah. And speaking about that, you know, in a weird way, I have a lot more compassion to the folks that have felt in other countries the business end of American power. because this is the first time it's been directed at me personally with my career. I've been working on my career for 22 years in information technology, and it could be over here in 2 weeks. Um, and I would be unhireable unless I can sort of find employers that are under 100 employees, and have to explain to them, they may have their own policies about, the shot. So, for me, this is the first time in my life that I have a lot of compassion for uh,
Yeah,
those nations that we've brutalized, because they have felt, and I'm feeling a soft end of it in that they're just ruining me economically, versus these folks were ruined, absolutely, they're everything.
yeah.
And
I
for
heard it.
me, it's just in a lot of ways I've been unleashed.
Yeah, I think. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
When you made that decision to say, "Well, screw it," I'd rather go hungry than to fold like a fold before them. Did you feel an instant sense of relief when you finally made that decision for yourself?
Honestly, I haven't felt any. People have asked me that. It's interesting you've asked me that. I have felt more of sense of indignation and anger. Um,
Right.
I felt I've wasted my life, my entire life. I've sat in a cube, or I've sat in an office, or I've sat at home. I've worked 8 to 10 hour days for 22 years, um, and it can all be taken away from me. So the I'm glad that it's happened. I'm not too old, but I'm in my 40s. So it's happened to me, and those were years I could have been doing something else in another country, and
Yeah.
building my life in another nation. So I feel as if I've wasted my life, I've wasted my time, I've wasted all of my soul energy into this, and now I realize the laws really are mostly suggestions until it's time to move them, for the powerful. And I feel as if, I'm still in that phase of anger and indignation, and also to wonder now that the curtain is truly fallen, one, with the people in my life, but also two, like I said, I'm at the business end of that American power. That rifle is pointed squarely at my career and my economic survival, which in America translates to how safe you are, how much medical care you can get, how much, you name it. In America, if you that determines what friends you have, who you associate with, what neighborhoods you live in. What neighborhoods that you live in determines how long you will live, in certain cases whether or not you'll get clean drinking water or not. So all of these things are at risk for me, and I just, I don't give a fuck. I just don't give a fuck. So, and in a lot of ways it's freeing. I just wish I would have known that this is really how it is here earlier in America. I wish I would have known that this is really what the country was about.
You'll be fine. Don't worry. I can tell you'll be fine. You've made the right decision. Fortune favors the brave. From a kind of an ethical and a karmic viewpoint, you've definitely done the right thing. You were saying earlier on about all these like chess beaters who all buckled.
Yep.
I saw that so much. We talk about that all the time here. Like so many of the local hard men, the local tough guys, the big shots, the big mouths, were the biggest cowards of all, the biggest cowards. And like you said, the veil has fallen, and as the veil falls, what an insight! What an insight! It's just true. Like you know, it, the, let's look at this from a positive point of view. When the shit hits the fan, and we put in times like this, not only do we find out who we really are, but we also find out who others really are. And
Mm-hmm.
I consider that a refinement process, because there are people in your life. Well, you realize now, okay, because of a stupid vaccine, they're giving me a hard time that they won't like. So the chances are, if I got sick, God forbid, I got something like cancer or something, these same fuckers wouldn't be there either. So I'm finding out now, before there's a major crisis like that, what their personalities are really like. And
Yeah.
this is the parallel society thing that I've been kind of promoting. This is the idea of like who we can trust now and who we can't. Okay, there are people on the fence who didn't make a whole. There's plenty of people who didn't they weren't Karens. They didn't point fingers and say, "Where's your mask?" and this kind of thing. Walk up to you in the street and say, "Did you get your vaccine?" A very personal question. My response to that was, "Did you get an abortion?" What do you mean? It's none of your business, this kind of thing. And yeah, I mean, so like I think you're right to do what you did. You're right. I mean, I made it. I remember a few months ago, like it just dawned on me, and a big part of my life is travel. I love traveling, and I love going and visiting and making films in different places, and then just sitting there one afternoon and saying, fuck it. If this means I'll never have to leave Ireland ever again in order not to take the jab, so be it. And I can, and I'd been angry up until that point, but then a kind of a weight was lifted off me as well because there's a clarity. I mean, this is what really causes the anger and the frustration and all these things is we have a lack of clarity and we're desperately trying to find focus. Give me some fucking focus. Show me something. And this is what it's like right now. And like I said, I think after Christmas, you said yourself, and then into the spring, we'll have that focus. You'll be fine. Don't worry about it. You're still young. You'll get through it somehow. But at the same time, too, it's unfortunate that this has to happen. But you know what they say, the old adage, as corny as it is, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah. And also, too, I keep saying to myself, short of us going Australia style, which it's not going that well there for them, I think they were hoping that everybody would cow. Obviously, that's not going all that well. If they tried to do those calculations with an armed society, obviously it's probably going to go a lot worse and it's going to be much more bumpy. But also, too, then I think that there's the cycle thing we were talking about. That's at play. Um, I think there's so many cross currents going on right now, and I just when this is all said and done, if it ever is, you're right. I like that it's a refinement process. Also, too, I know economically this is impactful, but I also try to think of those. I keep reminding myself history isn't over yet.
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
times people probably thought we were at the end of history, but I don't think so because obviously this is illuminated so much. And you think about World War II and what people went through then, or you think about other times whenever their homes were being bombed, and we haven't gotten to that point yet, but I think that so far, even with the what I've had to face, the friction I've had to face is still relatively light to what people have had to face in the past, and I try to keep reminding myself of that, um, and that certainly helps as well too. Certainly Ireland has had terrible problems before, so I'm sure I can't speak for you, but I'm sure you understand what I'm saying, that there were times when it was life and death, and right now it still is life and death, but it's in a softer way, so it's less tangible. In a lot of ways it's almost more infuriating, I guess.
Yeah. I was just talking to someone today. I saw that movie. I'd only seen that film, Come and See. It's quite a horrific but brilliant film about the World War II in Belarus. And it's a Belarusian film, but there's an English subtitle version it's a masterpiece on YouTube. And I was just looking at that, and you were saying about history hasn't ended. My grandparents were already adults when the events portrayed in that film were taking place. So that's how close the worst of history is to us. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's not that far away. It's not that far away. And my grandmother was shot when she was 3 during the Irish War of Independence through the hand. When she was 3 years old, she was accidentally shot. Well, she was shot by a stray bullet, went through her hand while she was looking out a window. And so, like, our ancestors have lived through much worse, but they had more clarity. This is the problem. This is what I go back to the clarity thing.
Yeah.
They knew why there was a war. They knew why there was people were dying. They knew what was there was the danger, the threat was immediate and present. It was clear and present. This what we have now is basically a seasonal flu and being told it's the end of the world by everybody in the power structure. And it's not. It just simply isn't. It's a bad seasonal flu. But what even the ones who've fallen for the whole narrative by the propaganda, even they, I know for a fact, at some level doubted as well. And you can tell that by when you try to say to them, look, there's another way of looking at this. Are you really sure what they're telling you on the evening news about this pandemic is the truth? And they become viscerally aggressive and defensive. Now, that's always a sign of insecurity. It's not cognitive dissonance. It's a sign that deep down inside they know it's a load of shit as well. But they're hedging their bets on the the leadership structure, this desperate need to have someone to save them, figuring it out for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So remember too, it's all built on a fragile lie.
It is. It is. And you know, to that, this sort of this fragile thing, you know, the reason why it's so fragile, like going back to what you were talking about, you know, hard lines were drawn. The line here, it's just quicksand. You know,
Yeah,
I always use this term dissolving consensus back when I was doing more Mandela effect kind of stuff. And it really is that. There's just no consensus on this because sort of, you know, me, I think COVID is real, but I'm sort of in your camp. I had it. You know, it sucked. It was 11 days of being really sick, and you know, it was awful. Um, so, you know,
and
but
it is dangerous to people who have cancer and HIV and diabetics and the elderly, of course.
of course,
Yeah,
but yeah,
don't
it's a
lock up everyone.
mhm. It's a new kind of flu, like you said. It's a new kind of flu. It's probably here to stay. Was it? You know, obviously. Did you read that thing in the Guardian? Um, it's saying now, they have early numbers now that complications that causes death from the vaccines. They've now topped the number of those that have actually died.
Well, I'm surprised that the Guardian of all places have actually admitted that.
Yep, hard left Guardian. Yes, the hard
Well,
left Guardian. I've got the article.
yeah, can you send that or post it in the comments? I'd like to read that later.
Yeah,
The Guardian of all people. Well, that's a turning point.
yeah, and it's and actually it was for a certain group of people. It was young males, and it is an interesting coincidence that this is killing young men of fighting age like 3 to 1 to all other groups. You know that is interesting. Anyway, yeah, I'll send that over. And it was young men. I think it was 12 to like 20 or something, and they get that heart inflammation and the rate at which they were killing them per thousand because of the vaccine is higher now than the rate of actual COVID. So the vaccine, so the cure is actually worse than the disease in that particular cohort. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, a young soccer star here died after taking the vaccine, and his family were all over the media, all over social media, saying, "Get the news out! This thing is deadly. It's so risky." And the mainstream media blocked them out. You know, like that's how absurd it was.
Oh God, no doubt.
That flew in the face of a political imperative.
Yeah, I mean, and in all honesty, too, I mean, I'm afraid to take the shot. You know, I know the VAERS numbers here. It's this database that they put it in. You keep hearing just this anecdotal stuff of, you know, people not entering in things like someone will die of a stroke, and they won't relate it to the fact that someone had gotten the shot within, you know, 72 hours of the stroke, and they would simply call it a stroke. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that person wasn't going to have a stroke anyway, but certainly it's worth looking at and checking into and making sure you have all the right facts. Um, one thing, I don't know if you have access. I watched this one podcast called Dark Horse Media, and I think they're married. They're a couple, but um, they're scientists and they're biologists, and they go into the science. And that's actually where I heard about the Guardian article, and it's really good stuff over there. So if you ever wanted to check that out, they talk about it all. I'm surprised they're not banned yet, frankly.
Well, that's good. And that's so we should look whenever we find glimmers of hope, optimism as they call it, we should go for it because that's a big step in the direction of the Guardian of all people admitting that. Also, Norway and Denmark has stopped all restrictions. So this is
Mm.
no, there was no consistency. You had a vicious lockdown in Ireland, and then a pretty bad lockdown in the UK, and then no lockdown in Sweden. And it's like, what? And then a nasty lockdown in France. Then an ad hoc, nasty, not so bad, nasty lockdown in Spain. Then you had regional areas in the United States where you had no lockdowns and other parts where you had really bad lockdowns. There was absolutely no consistency. And that's what I think also bothered me the most. It was like, if you're all such fucking experts, how come you can't all agree on the same thing?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. So let me ask you, has this changed anything with, well, obviously, because you mentioned the travel and everything, but you mentioned that you mentioned obviously on this show, and obviously if anyone's watched your work before, they know you're a pagan. How has this affected any kind of day to day rituals or anything like that? I mean, you don't have to get too specific, but how has it affected you?
Well, I'm a self, practicing. I'm not involved in a coven or anything like that, or a group or anything like that, or any kind of ritual ceremonial thing. It hasn't affected me at all that way. It's strengthened my belief in the power of nature, if anything else. It's like I can remember I've seen how nature has flourished during the lockdowns and that it could survive anything. And that was actually a beautiful thing. We had the very severe lockdown at first here, where basically you couldn't travel a mile and there was police or soldiers sending you back home. All you could do was get groceries. And so people were stuck in their houses getting deliveries mostly. And I live in a rural area outside a small town, and nature just flourished in that period. So I got a huge amount of comfort from that. That nature is more, it has this tremendous power, and us being part of nature have this tremendous power for rejuvenation and stuff like that. What it has made me also appreciate being a pagan is I didn't have this apocalyptic end time psychosis or this need for a savior like you get in Christianity, a Messiah type figure. Now, the Messiah type figure here and around the world was anyone who could deliver the vaccine at one point. It became a kind of like a spiritual event. And are they going to bring us this? It became a cult. That's because I'm outside the Abrahamic framework. I I avoided a lot of that kind of nonsense as well, of needing a savior, needing redemption from the pestilence or whatever. So no, it hasn't affected me that way. How it's really affected me is that I spent a lot more time indoors than I would like, and one of these fellas that people that I have to have, if I have to go somewhere, I have to be doing something. So going to an ancient site or something like that and filming it or photographing it, I have to be physically doing something. I'm not the type of guy who can just go for a walk and not just for the sake of a walk. I know that's weird, but it's just how I am. I need it has. I'm always on a quest or on an adventure. I'm adventure mad. I love adventures, and that was the hardest part for me because they took all the adventures away from me, and that was the most painful part of all.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you're sort of through. It sounds to me like you're starting to. You're in your kind of reconstruction period. You know, it sounds to me like I'm right in the white hot center of the destruction, and I think society's doing it at a macro level, and then we all do it in our own kind of micro levels. My career's at stake. A lot of really important personal relationships are at stake and have already destructed. To them, they don't even know because, once you lose respect for someone and you know they don't have the kind of integrity you thought they had, it's just never the same again. I mean, you can still sit at a table with them and talk with them and everything, but once
There's,
that's gone, you can never get that back.
there's a certain it's like that moment, you look in their eyes and you're like, I mean, the most common question I've been asking myself about people in the last year and a half has been, where the hell have you gone? Where did you go to? Where is the person that I knew? Where are you now? What are you? Why are you this thing cowering at the feet of the media, begging for pharmacological salvation? Is this how you've always been, or is this a new you? You
Yeah.
know, this kind of thing. And it goes to show you how many people's personalities or sense of self is basically very fleeting and arbitrary.
It is. It is. And it's just no. There's no strength. I mean, just the slightest bit of friction, and they just want this smooth flow into life. And it's like, just go without a plan once. Just go without a plan. That's all right. Just freestyle it for a minute. That's all right. And if more people did that, it's just and you know what's funny is the same people before all of this happened, and I don't know if it's the same for you, they complained all the time. They were either complaining or they were beating their chest, but they always wanted something else, and and it's like, now you're saying what you have is worth risking your health and your integrity and ultimately our freedom. And I'm not one of those guys swinging the American flag, saying America, and doing the type. And I'm
Yeah.
not at all that person. But it's like it's gotten so bad that people like me, who generally are not in that camp, are having to take up that hill, have to
Yeah.
fight on that hill. And it's like, you got to be kidding me, man. I'm like an IT guy. You got to be kidding me. This is stupid. And it's just, I think too, what's infuriating is I think a lot of people that are in rural areas, really rural areas, in the interior of the country, probably a lot of them have the luxury that it hasn't affected them either way. Meaning, a lot of them aren't vaccinated, and because of the governors they have that are red state governors, they don't have to worry about it as much. Um, and that's a shame to take that selfish approach. So I'm not saying just the people who gave into the vaccination. I'm also saying to the people who aren't vaccinated, who haven't, who are just more or less ambivalent about the whole thing. One of the reasons why I'm doing the show today was one. I've noticed some of the material that you've talked about, and it was just a kind of harmonized or where I was at in terms of this thing. So that's why I wanted to talk with you about it, because I knew we were kind of simpatico on this. And
Right.
this is the beginning of that, because I just, if you take that last bit away from me, then I'm completely free in a way. It's as painful as it is, I will be. And it's like, they gave you a perfect opportunity to free yourself, and you just snatched, defeat from the jaws of victory, and it's just such a shame.
Yeah. It's interesting that you're never a jingoistic guy, but now you really have valued those values. You come to see that those people who had those in the USA, those values of freedom and independence, that they were absolutely right all along. You know, they were totally right. You we cannot take that away from them. The folks in countries, and particularly the United States, who always said freedom is everything, government get out of my life, freedom is everything, freedom is, the whole, that, the license plate in New Hampshire, live free or die.
Mm-hmm.
We now know that those people that we may have called, like, hit rednecks, or good old boys, or
Mm-hmm.
this kind of thing in the past. Well, guess what? Those guys were right all along.
Absolutely. I think too, and now that we're getting so late in this, I mean, a decision has to be made sometime about about all of this, And I try my hardest to avoid politics, and in a way, I sort of am, because both sides are just they're just flagrant, they're disgusting. On
Yeah.
the left, obviously, you have Joe, and he's just this tyrant. He's an absolute tyrant to tell people what they can do with their bodies. He's destroyed Afghanistan. The border's open. It's an absolute nightmare. On the right wing, the Republicans, they're gonna. I saw a senator saying he's gonna write a stern letter. A stern fucking letter? Are you kidding me? A stern fucking letter? We've destroyed countries. We're bombing children. We have, people dying all over in my name. And you're gonna write a stern fucking letter? Really? And, I partially blame myself. I stayed out of the fold. I kept myself out of it, which is probably the reason I'm in the situation I am. Everyone is to blame here. Everyone has, even in the audience, we all have our own parts to blame. You know, I could have been more active in my civic duties, and I wasn't. So all of us are to blame here. And, you know, this is obviously coming to a head somehow in some way, and I don't know how, and I don't know what way. I just know when it does, I'm probably not going to have a job. So I don't know how to act. I've been working since I was 15, so I don't know what that's like. So this is totally new territory to me. I don't know.
But it could be a good thing too. It probably will be. You'll find new strengths within yourself, and you'll pull new things out of yourself. I think you'll be fine. I wouldn't worry about it. I think you're doing the right thing. It's a brave decision, but it's also a wise decision. We now understand why people died for their freedom. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? We understand all. We understand now. Like, we watch films like Braveheart and see William Wallace or Mel Gibson, and why that moves us so much. When he screams freedom, and I mean, this is what makes us humans, is that we have this innate thing, for not all of us, by the way, that have this innate thing for freedom. And that's if there's anything positive to come out of this, is that we'll have a new kind of freedom movement that will be more people. Not no I will never take the freedom that I had in my life for granted ever again. I will never take that for granted ever again. And I'm sorry, like you said, I didn't play a more active part in protecting it, but none of us expected the world to be taken over by a bunch of hypochondriacs with, Pol Pot leanings. No,
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah, and like I said, I blame myself just as much. I'm just as guilty. But the surprising thing to me is I always had a vague notion that I had principles and that there was a rock within me that wasn't movable, and to be face to face with that is really kind of jarring. That I've now found my line. It's a very strange thing. You were talking about like Braveheart and the freedom thing, and there's really something to that, and it's innate, I think, in every person. They all have their different lines. Obviously, I'm reaching my line, but it's very odd to come face to face. We've lived so relatively in abundance for so long. Or at least I have. I can't speak for everyone. That I haven't really ever had to face. I had this vague notion of what my principles were and what I lived by, and it's now that time I'm being tested for that. And I just don't know that this is going to be the end, though. I think 2022, we will get some clarity, but I think this is just the beginning. I think 2022 is going to be more hardcore than this year. I truly do.
Well, I haven't reached that length yet. I don't know what 2022 holds, but I do think one thing I do think, I do feel that it holds, is a surprise. But I don't feel it. I don't feel a sense of ominousness. Now, maybe I'm being naive, or maybe I don't feel like I'm denying it, but I don't feel like, yes, next year will be worse. Me personally,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it could be. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I hope I'm not. But at the same time, too, I can't I can't focus on predictions or hedge my bets when we're all living in this miasma of confusion and not know what next week holds for us. So again, it's the lack of clarity, the lack of information, the lack of focus, which is the real monkey on our backs that is causing so many of us to feel this way, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Oh man. All right. Well, we're right at the hour. I usually keep these things at an hour. I just want to thank you. I really appreciate you coming on and talking with me. It's a real pleasure. I've always wanted to talk with you, so it's kind of cool talk. I've been listening to your stuff for years. I'm in, wherever you pop up, I'll listen. Um, and I really hope I'd like to meet you in person someday if this thing ever, calms down. I'd love to go over to Ireland and meet you, or you come over here, and that'd be great.
We'll make a film on the Mandela effect. I tell you what, we'll do it. Let's do it.
Let's
Let's
do it.
promise. Let's promise each other that at some point in the future we'll make a film on the Mandela effect.
That'd be awesome. That would be a real treat for me, man.
It's already happened. And put that focus in your mind, and fuck everything else, and then
Yeah.
it'll happen.
That's awesome. Okay. All right, everybody. I know we've had some sound issues. I just want to thank everybody. I see a lot of the regulars in here, and thank you so much. And obviously, Thomas, thank you. And all right, everybody, that's pretty much it for the show. I'm going to shut down. And
Can I just say one thing?
sure.
Could everybody, your listeners, please go to my Beyond Room 313 channel on YouTube and subscribe to that, please. Beyond Room 313.
There it is. Please do that. And he's got a lot of really interesting material that you should pick up. Seriously, everybody out there, just he's just a really talented, really smart guy. So please just check it out. Check out all his stuff. All right, everybody, we're out of here. Hey, stay on.